Welcome to Requiro. Today we are going to be talking about generational trauma. And before we get into everything and the nitty-gritty bits of the video, I do want to put a trigger warning here, so I'm going to put it up on screen for you guys.
Trigger warning. In this video, I do talk about and discuss childhood abuse, physical abuse, verbal abuse, self-injury, SAR, illicit substances abuse, domestic abuse, alcohol abuse, emotional abuse, physical or emotional neglect, and a lot of these words will be heavily censored all the way through the video, and these won't be heavily discussed, it will just be brought up in discussion.
And if any of those things in the trigger warning are triggering for you, please click off this video and go watch another one of my videos that isn't triggering whatsoever, or watch an entirely different video entirely. And if you think, oh, this will be great, it's been a long time, I can handle it. No, you can't. Trust me, it will send you back into a dark place. So again, if any of those things are triggering or anything else I mentioned in this video kind of trigger you, please click off this video and take care of yourself. Okay, so another thing I do want to add here is because good old YouTube does not like certain words, and I am going to be censoring some words. I know that annoys some people, but good old YouTube does not like when we say these type of words because this platform is really targeted towards children. Look at the Mr. Beast stuff. Don't tell me adults watch that shit and enjoy it, okay? Like, good old YouTube does not like it, and also it won't be as triggering when I censor these words. I know not a lot of people like it, but I want this video to be as accessible and understandable for as many people as possible. I know not a lot of people like that because they think it's annoying, or it's like making the word not as meaningful as it normally should be. Again, YouTube doesn't like it, and I also want it to be not as triggering for you guys if you're watching this video, and also I want this video to be as accessible as possible to as many age groups as possible, instead of just like 18 and up, because I know there's people in their teens that are dealing with this as well, and it's very hard to understand what the hell's going on when you're such a young age. So I want them to understand what this is as well, and I don't want this to be excluded from them because of how old they are, if that makes sense. So these are the words I'm going to be censoring. I'm going to put it up on screen for you guys. Hi, it's voiceover me, so I won't be having this bit read out like I normally do in all my other videos, because it has the actual like full words that I am going to be censoring, and I don't want this video again be taken down. So if you are just listening along and watching on YouTube, just like pop over and look at the screen. Sorry for the people who struggle with reading. That's why I very much do this audio bit, but just pop over and look at the screen of what words I'm going to be censoring. And if you were just listening along on the podcast version of this, you can like just work out what words I'm censoring. It'll be pretty easy. I'm literally using the first letter of like the word I'm censoring, if that makes sense. So anyway, these are the words I'm going to be censoring. Okay, so we went over the trigger warnings, all the censor words and all that. We'll pass that now, okay? Also, don't mind my sleeve being like this. This is like my favorite hoodie. I've owned this since I was like 17, and it has been wearing down quite a bit. And on this side, it is very much destroyed. And if I don't roll it up, I'll just play with this thing for hours on end and nothing will get done. So ignore the random roll up bit. But honestly, do you guys really care? But like, I do really feel like you guys aren't really here for the visuals of the video. You're just here to listen along. So I really wanted to make this video talking about generational trauma, because it's something that like society doesn't really talk about, because on one hand, those people have like great amazing families where they can run off to when everything turns to shit, or they won't be treated horribly or terribly. They go back to their parents, or they're living with their parents and that's great, and it's very much a thing that society doesn't really care about or bother to understand, or even if it is brought up and put into their faces, it's very much like hush hush, put it underneath the rug, we don't want to see that. But I do really want to talk about it because, again, it is an issue that happens to a lot of people, and like, sadly, not a lot of people bother to understand or get it because they've never been through generational trauma before in their life or anything like that, so they don't bother to try to understand. And I want to make this video as easy to understand as much as possible because, again, like I said earlier, I want this video to be as accessible and understandable as much as possible for people that are younger, that are probably dealing with generational trauma and they have no idea what the hell's going on, and I just want them to realize what the hell's going on. They're not crazy, and even people that are older or like in their 20s, 30s, 40s, etc. And I want them to understand what this is and they're not alone. Understandable much as possible for people who've never been through generational trauma and want to learn something new or help someone in their life that have dealt with something like that. So I just want to make this video as easy, as digestible as much as possible. And another thing I do want to add here is if I seem a bit choked up at times going through this video is because I have dealt with generational trauma as well in my own personal life, so I might get a little bit choked up at times. Even if I knew when I was researching this video, I did take a lot of breaks when I was doing research and stuff for this video because it did get a little bit overwhelming at times for me because I have dealt with it in the past. And if I do seem a bit choked up at times, it's just because it is a little bit triggering at times for me. But I do want to push through and make this video because it is something no one really talks about, and it's something that really needs to be addressed, and I really want to talk about it, so just hold on with me, so just stick with me, okay? Again, I just really wanted to make this video and get it out there, even if it's going to be a little bit hard for me to make. It's something that people really need to know and understand about because it does happen a lot more than expected. So, and if there's anything I missed or anything I got wrong or anything I didn't really cover that well in this video, because again, I do want to take this topic with caution and care like it deserves, and let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure to pin it or bring it up into my next video. And also, all the information and sources I used in this video will be on this week's episode on the website, so you can go there and look at all the sources and all that if you want to learn more about this topic that I'm going to be talking about today. And also, I do want to add here is if you are dealing with generational trauma, I am going to put sources and all that in this week's episode. If you want to reach out and get help, I'm going to put that on the website as well, so you can go check it out. Let's get into the video. And this is the definition of what generational trauma is, and when I was reading this one, I thought it was a very good one to explain what is generational trauma in the most easiest digestible way for someone who's never dealt with generational trauma, or someone is younger or is dealing with generational trauma to understand. So I'll put it up on screen for you guys. So this is the definition of what generational trauma is.
Generational trauma, also known as intergenerational or transgenerational trauma, is a cycle of trauma that passes through families. Causes include the lasting impact of traumatic experiences like racism, violence, and other types of oppression or tragedy. Much like traditions, heirlooms, hair color, and secret family recipes get passed down, people can also inherit trauma. Generational trauma occurs through biological, environmental, psychological, and social means.
I think that was like the best way to describe what generational trauma is, definition wise anyway, to like understand and get. And I do recommend checking out Like to Go's video on generational trauma. It's a YouTube channel talking about psychology and all that. And they do actually have like psychologists and all that working on the channel, so everything is actually like factual. So I do recommend to go watch that video. And also in the definition we just looked at, and also in Psych2Go's video, and also all the other sources I looked at about generational trauma. Generational trauma is also passed down through genetically as well. So basically, Luigi Mangione, he was not wrong when he said he thinks generational trauma is passed down like generational wealth. So Luigi Mangione was not wrong, and I found that quite interesting. Like, literally when I was researching this, it's like, huh, Luigi was not wrong. Like, I think in the original video, I don't think I said Luigi was like wrong or anything like that, but I just didn't realize that it can also be passed down like through genetics. So I didn't realize that. So I came across this post. I'm not sure it was like from Reddit or Tumblr. I think it's from Tumblr because of the format. I came across this on like YouTube from like one of those YouTube short channels who read stories from like Reddit or Tumblr, but it's only in short form. So I came across that on YouTube, and I think this is a really good way to explain what it's like living with parents that are abusive and the effects of their abuse put on you, and they 100% don't understand or get what they've done, and it literally just goes right over their head, and literally to them it's literally just another Thursday to them instead of what the impact they've done onto you. So I'll put it up on screen for you guys. I think it's like a really good way to describe what it's like living with abusive parents.
In 20 years, you won't remember your kid leaving dinner unfinished, but they'll always remember you yelling about it. I once reminded my mum about a childhood fight where she was screaming and throwing things, and I whispered I love you to calm her down. She just replied, well, I don't love you right now. Decades later, I mentioned it to her and she genuinely didn't remember. Our relationship was never the same after that moment, but for her it was just a random Tuesday. Exactly. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers. Parents might move on from their harsh words easily, but kids carry those wounds forever. You actually remember that? Yes, because for you it was insignificant, but for me, it literally shaped who I became. Childhood trauma isn't trivial. Every careless word from parents leaves a mark. You can't scream someone into forgetting, they just learn to live quietly wounded.
Basically, generational trauma isn't just passed down through genetics. Generational trauma is also passed down through actions. Like, generational trauma isn't just passed down through genetics, like I mentioned before. Generational trauma is also very much passed down through actions from the parents themselves, like DV and also VD and also SA or anything like that, and that's very much passed down. The adults have probably witnessed that in their own lives from their parents, and they just never bothered to understand or regulate their own emotions and put that onto their actual children, and they're just redoing the cycle all over again. The adults pushing their own emotions and actions onto their actual children, they're just basically ginormous fucking children that do not know how to regulate their own emotions like actual functioning adults. And those adults who have not recognized their own trauma and pushing those emotions onto their own children, repeating the cycle of what was done to them and placing that trauma onto the actual child itself, and that is not fair on the actual child dealing with that trauma the parent has already have. And other things can also be a factor with generational trauma, like drinking and smoking, and also illegal substance abuse, and also actions like PA or even VA as well. And these actions don't even have to be towards the actual child. The child can also just witness these actions as well, and it can also affect the child. My sister's coming. I think I might have to move. Okay, sorry for like the sudden like random scenery change, just because my sister woke up. 1, we're talking about generational trauma, it is a touchy subject. 2, my sister likes being on her laptop and chatting to her friends, and she laughs randomly at times, you know, like you do with friends. And 3, when I ask her, can you be quiet for something that I'm doing that's important, she sometimes says, I will try. So fun. So yeah, sorry for the random scenery change. This is my bed. If you guys remember a couple of videos ago, I filmed on my floor in front of my cupboards. I just want to sit somewhere that's more comfortable and not as cold as the floor. So hopefully that you guys will be okay with this. I do really want to make a video in the future talking about VA, because again, it's something that no one really talks about and it's very much invisible, so no one really sees it, because VA is very much as impactful as PA, if that makes sense. But yeah, I will make a video on that in the future. And those parents repeating those actions that were done to them towards their own children, they are just repeating the cycle all over again because they don't know how to regulate and control their own emotions like full-grown ass adults, like they're meant to, and treating their children like their very own verbal or physical punching bags, or using them as a therapist because, again, they can't be bothered to regulate their own emotions with full-grown ass adults like they're meant to, because again, they are just giant children, and putting all that onto the actual child themselves that, one, never chose to be here in the first place. They did not get to choose to be here. They did not get to choose to live in a household where their parents can't regulate their own emotions because of what they went through, and they're just repeating the cycle all over again. And sad fact is, those children who are dealing with generational trauma from their parents could also repeat the cycle again and again and again. And with cases like this, with children dealing with generational trauma, it is making the child grow up way faster than they are intended to, and making the child grow up way more faster compared to their peers. It also leaves the child more isolated than beforehand. Those childhood years are very much stolen from them, and those children dealing with generational trauma, they can never get those years back, and they're not meant to deal with all these adult emotions at such a young age. And no child is deserving of that. Every child deserves to be loved, to be cared for, to be made feel like they're allowed to come home when everything goes to shit. They're meant to be allowed to express how they feel and not be afraid for it. Every child should be allowed to come home and feel safe and be a actual child. And there has been scientific studies on the development on the brain with someone dealing with trauma compared to someone who has not dealt with trauma. The brain reacts very differently with actions and emotions and problem thinking with someone dealing with trauma and growing up in that environment with trauma compared to someone who has not dealt with that whatsoever in their life, especially with a growing, developing mind like a child. Their brain is very much wired differently compared to someone who has not dealt with trauma whatsoever. Now, this is the scientific study of the effects of trauma on a developing brain. I do actually have a couple in this section, but the first one I found does cover things quite a bit in detail, but then I found another one I also want to add on here as well to cover more things as well. So again, I'll put this up on screen for you guys.
Implicated brain regions and interconnecting pathways have been found to have sensitive periods in childhood when they are most vulnerable to the effects of trauma exposure. In addition, exposure to specific forms of complex trauma in childhood, including neglect, emotional abuse (VA), SAR, and witnessing DA, has been shown to have distinct effects on specific brain regions. The effects on brain development caused by exposure to complex trauma in childhood have been associated with psychopathology, maladaptive coping, and heightened behavioral and health risk trajectories. Exposure to complex trauma in early childhood leads to structural and functional brain changes. Structural changes alter the volume or size of specific brain regions. Proven structural changes include enlargement of the amygdala, the alarm center of the brain, and shrinkage of the hippocampus, a brain area critical to remembering the story of what happened during a traumatic experience. Functional changes alter activity of certain brain regions. These include overproduction of stress hormones in childhood that can wear down the immune system and lead to depletion by adulthood of hormones necessary to tolerate and recover from stressful situations encountered in daily life. Many such abnormalities identified through neuroimaging that have previously been attributed to psychiatric illness have been scientifically proven to be the result of prior childhood maltreatment.
So that was the first article of what the effects of trauma on a child's developing brain is, and this is another one I found I wanted to add here as well because it does cover it in a lot more detail and a lot more compared to the first one, but I do feel like both of these are very much necessary in this video of the effects of trauma on a child's brain. So I'll put that on the screen for you guys.
Neurobiological systems may be particularly susceptible to deleterious impact of childhood trauma, and the impact of childhood trauma on development and subsequent functional outcomes across the lifespan has been well documented. The current review addresses the neurobiological impact of exposure to interpersonal trauma in childhood in the context of executive function, emotion regulation, and association/interoceptive awareness. Subsequent risk for PTSD and depression is also discussed. The pathway of risk from childhood trauma to these cognitive, emotional, and psychiatric outcomes is addressed in terms of potential structural and functional alterations within the hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala resulting from chronic or repeated activation of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis and its interaction with an influence on genetic and epigenetic processes during sensitive periods of development. Implications for practice are discussed. A robust body of research demonstrates that prolonged or repeated exposure to stress and trauma can have serious negative consequences for physical and mental health. Schneiderman, Ironson, and Siegel, 2005, particularly when stress is experienced early in development. Lupien, Aulett-Morin, Herber, Juster, and McEwen, 2016. A clear dose-response relationship exists between exposure to stress or trauma in early life and risk for psychiatric morbidity over the lifespan, including for post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD) and depression. Norman et al., 2012. This facilitation of risk may be partly the result of cascading neurobiological changes over the course of development, which influence neurocognitive and emotion regulation abilities, and ultimately interfere with adaptive stress responses to future stressful events. Tyker, Sampson, Anderson, and Ohashi, 2016, Dunn, Nishimi, Powers, and Bradley, 2017. For this review, with regard to childhood stressful and traumatic experiences, we focus on findings related to childhood exposure to interpersonal trauma because, relative to non-interpersonal trauma, interpersonal trauma may be more likely to recur across development and to present in multiple forms. Marston and Wright, 1998, such that children are often exposed to multiple types of abuse and/or neglect, that is, PA, SAR, emotional abuse, and/or physical and emotional neglect. Finkelher, Turner, Omrod, and Hamby, 2009, as well as to witnessed family violence, Zoliter, Theodore, Coyne Beasley, and Runyon, 2007. Because children are likely to spend a large majority of their time during the first several years of life with family or other caregivers, exposure to violence, abuse, or neglect in a primary setting, such as the home, may promote persistent fear and anticipation of recurrence and, thus, represent just the kind of stressor that can profoundly alter neurobiological development. Tirallo and Gunnar, 2006. Therefore, the current review considers the impact of childhood interpersonal trauma, as a form of chronic stress exposure, on neurobiological development. We address the impact of chronic stress exposure on neurobiological development during childhood, in part through the potential roles of repeated activation of the physiological stress response system, environmental influence on gene expression, and specific sensitive periods of development. Given the broad-reaching impact of trauma on development, that is, multifinality, we focus not only on the impact of childhood trauma on neurobiological development with respect to risk for specific diagnoses, for example, depression, PTSD, but also on the impacts on three areas of functioning that cut across diagnoses. 1. Executive function. 2. Emotion regulation. And 3. Dissociation/interoceptive awareness.
So that was the second article talking about the effects of trauma on a developing brain. That sounds so creepy every time I say it. I swear I'm not a zombie or a crazy scientist, I swear. And that article very much went into more detail of the effects and chemicals happening in a child's brain when trauma happens to the child. The effects of trauma on a child's brain that is very much still developing compared to a child who has not dealt with trauma. So again, I just wanted to add those two there because they did go into a lot of good detail talking about what the effects of trauma on a child's developing brain. Now, I did say it was just going to be two, but I did come across this other article talking about just trauma in general, of the effects on the brain. So like, say someone has not dealt with generational trauma, but they had trauma in other things, it actually has a name as well. It is called biology. Probably fucked that up, whatever. I'll put it up on the screen when it actually says somewhere up in here. But that is the actual name, what it's called, what happens to the brain after dealing with trauma. And I came across this article, I just found it very interesting, and I think this very much does relate to like kids dealing with trauma and also just people in general. I do recommend to go read this full article if you're curious more about trauma on the brain instead of just like trauma on a developing kid's mind. I do recommend to go read this article as well if it's not too triggering for you. So again, I do think this is necessary as well, and I found it like very interesting as well. So I'll put it up on screen for you guys here.
When someone experiences a traumatic event or experiences extreme fear, brain chemistry is altered and the brain begins to function differently. This is called the fear security, and it is a protective mechanism which we all have inside of us. The neurobiology of trauma, essentially the effects of trauma on the brain, is important to understand because it helps break down common misconceptions and victim blaming about gender-based violence, and it helps survivors to understand their experience and the aftermath in a new way. We encourage you to watch the video below by Dr. Jim Hopper and read through the information on this page to learn more. The prefrontal cortex is the decision-making / choice-making part of the brain. It's the part of the brain responsible for rational thinking, planning effective responses, remembering important information, etc. When a person is experiencing a traumatic event or experiencing extreme fear, their fear circuitry may kick in and the prefrontal cortex begins to function less effectively. This means that in the midst of trauma, a person may not be able to think through the situation and make decisions such as calling for help. It is not a matter of choice. Their brain is in survival mode and the fear circuitry is bypassing their prefrontal cortex entirely. Memories are encoded differently during a traumatic event. The brain does not encode memories in chronological order. There are gaps in memory, and whatever the fear circuitry in the brain focused attention on during the assault is more likely to be encoded into memory than periphery details. For example, a survivor may have a very clear memory of the smell of the perpetrator's cologne, but not have any memory of what the room looked like. Contextual information, for example, the layout of a room, and time sequence information, for example, the order in which SAR occurred, are often poorly encoded. Again, this is not a conscious choice a survivor is making about what to focus on or remember during an assault. It is a common impact on the brain when the fear circuitry survival response kicks in.
And those 3 articles I just put up on screen, they have a lot more information in there if you guys want to go check it out. But if it is too triggering for you, please don't go read them. Again, your mental health is way more important than reading an article. But if you're curious and want to read more, go check out those articles. And kids dealing with generational trauma, they can also develop really unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with the pain of dealing with generational trauma, like drinking, illegal substance abuse, and also self-injury, and also other coping mechanisms that I can't really find right now that are very unhealthy. And they could also probably witness that when they were growing up, seeing their parents do that, and they thought, oh, that's how they're coping. They can also do it too, to cope with the pain inside. And now let me say this here: a child is not a therapist. A child is not someone you can treat like a punching bag. A child is not like a pet. Children need more than just the bare minimum. They need more than just food, water, and a roof over their head and a bed. A child is not a pet. They never chose to be in this world. You never chose to be into this world. I never chose to be into this world. A child is not a pet. They need more than just the bare minimum. They need love. They need care. They need you to show love towards them. They need love that is real and not transactional, like, or you can take away easily. Children need that. They need you to show up for them. Children need you to like go to every soccer game or orange slices, I guess, brought up to your room. I don't know. I'm making this shit up. My kids need more than the bare minimum. Because again, they are not a pet, they are a real human being who needs to know the do's and don'ts of life. And sad fact is probably the parents that are doing the abuse towards their own children have probably dealt with that same abuse from their own parents that have also dealt with pain and struggle and abuse growing up. And sometimes that's not even the case. Like, some people are just horrible and abusive and their lives are just fucking fine. So that's how the world is, and it makes no goddamn sense. And sadly, they are just repeating the cycle over again. Generational trauma, it does not discriminate. It can happen to anyone. It can happen to someone from any race, any culture, any religion, any financial position. Like, someone who grew up with a lot of money growing up can also deal with the same type of generational trauma as someone who did not grow up with a lot of money. Generational trauma does not discriminate, and it doesn't matter where you came from. It does not discriminate. those parents, they use their own children like it's their own therapist. Like, that is not fair on the child. They don't deserve to deal with all these adult emotions, and like I said before, it is making the child grow up a lot faster than they're meant to, and kids are not meant to deal with the adult emotions of adults at such a young age. They also like try to live through the child themselves, and it's really weird and fucked up, honestly. It's like, let them live their own lives. And sad fact is, dealing with generational trauma is, and trying to talk about it to other people who've never dealt with generational trauma or trauma itself in their fucking lives, they just think, oh, your parent was just mean to you sometimes. In reality, no, that is not the case. Abuse is way more than just a parent was mean to you time to time. That is not the case. And that just makes it harder for children to, or even people in general, to reach out for help when people around them don't take it seriously and think it's nothing, and it makes it harder for them to get actual general help that they need. And making it harder for the child or even person to get help makes them more rely on the people that have abused them. And again, that is not healthy on the person in the long run, and might lead to something way worse than they were already in, if that makes sense. They should not need to do that, and be allowed to be free and happy and have love that is towards them. And if you have a family member or a friend who was brave enough to tell you what is going on, please attempt to help them, or even just, sometimes people just need someone to listen to them. And if you can't help them because you have no goddamn idea, please go find someone who can actually help them for the help they actually need. And it is very brave of them to bring that stuff up, because sadly there still is a lot of stigma talking about trauma and all that in society. Normally in this part of the video, I would like to bring other people's Reddit stories into it to explain more of the situation and what people have lived through, but I don't want to make this video more traumatizing than it actually is, so I won't be bringing up any Reddit stories or anything in this part of the video. So now I'm going to talk about some signs of generational trauma, and I want to talk about this here because maybe it is very hard to see and understand if you're living through it yourselves as a child or even as a full-grown ass adult. It is very hard to see if you're in the midst of it, if that makes sense. So, and also normally I would go through the textbook definition when I talk about this kind of stuff, but sadly in cases like this, it is not always the case, the textbook definition of abuse. So I'm just going to put some things up here.
Your parents have dealt with a traumatic experience in the past by their own parents. They don't have to directly tell you this has happened. You can tell by their actions, words they say, or passive-aggressive behavior or comments. One or more family members place their pain and struggles onto you, using you as a personal therapist instead of actually going to therapy like a responsible adult. They burden the child with their issues because they refuse to seek professional help. They repeat the same abuse that was done to them, such as VA or PA, or emotional neglect, or physical neglect towards their own children. They may also engage in harmful behavior around you, such as drinking, smoking, or using illegal substances. They also care more about their reputation, and don't really care about you or your emotions, or anything you're going through.
So those are the basically signs of if you are living in a household with generational trauma, or if you've been through generational trauma, or even anything I mentioned in this video, you've seen any of those signs, you are dealing with generational trauma. Okay, so that was a lot to go through and very heavy, so take a deep breath in and breathe out, And now I'm going to move on onto a lighter note of things, where this is how you can end the cycle where it ends with you. Things you can do if you are dealing with generational trauma and you don't want to keep repeating the same thing that your parents have done to you, or even your grandparents have done to your parents. So I'm going to put up on screen for you guys.
Recognize the actions your parents or even grandparents have done, and understand that those actions were wrong. You should not repeat them. Instead, try your best to move past them. Try your best not to follow the same footsteps as your parents. Do not repeat those harmful patterns with your own children. Someone once told me, just don't have kids, and that can also be a valid option. If you have abusive parents, I believe you should aim to be better than them. I know it might sound selfish to say you're better than someone else, but choosing to be kinder and more self-aware than an abusive or harmful person is a good path in life. Try not to repeat the way they treat people or speak to others, especially family. Do not repeat the same harmful actions as your parents. Break the cycle. Journaling or writing your thoughts in a diary, going to therapy, or talking to someone you trust can help release built-up emotions. Letting things out is healthier than letting them take control. If you don't have anyone you trust because they haven't been through what you have, it's okay to seek support elsewhere. Find a community outside of your family, even if it's just online, like on Reddit. Educate yourself about your family history. Learning about what happened to previous generations might help you make sense of your own experiences. Sometimes, it can become a source of pride and help you feel more connected to your roots. Practice self-care. It's essential to care for yourself emotionally and physically. This can include exercise, relaxation techniques, time outdoors, and a healthy diet. Connect with others who've had similar experiences. Support groups can be helpful if you've been affected by a specific kind of trauma. Seek a mental health professional if you're struggling to cope. A therapist or counselor who specializes in trauma can help you work through it. While talking to peers helps, trauma dumping can sometimes make things worse. Therapy offers tools to process your trauma more effectively. In some cases, leaving may be the only option, especially if you've tried to communicate and nothing changes. Cutting people off can be painful, but sometimes it's necessary. If you are a teenager, I strongly recommend finishing high school. It's important, especially in today's world. If you're fearful for your life or safety, please reach out to services that can help you escape that situation. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to break the chain. Even though it may hurt and take time to heal, leaving can be the better option when words no longer work.
And if you are dealing with generational trauma or abusive parents or anything like that, just keep holding on and have little things that keep you anchored and give you at least a little slither bit of hope, like drawing, or maybe a piece of jewelry, or soccer or sports you like to play, or anything like that to keep going until you can change things. And normally in this part of the video, I normally would like to add my own personal experience or my own story with this kind of stuff, but in reality I am not ready to tell my story about generational trauma, and that is absolutely okay. And if you are a person who feels like they're not ready to tell their story, you don't ever have to tell your story. You can just give off bits and pieces if you feel comfortable. It's okay if you don't want to tell your story. It's okay if you want to tell your story. Just make sure you're in a safe environment with people that do care about you, about it, or even go to safe places like Reddit or little communities like that people have dealt with the same pain and struggles that you have done, where you can feel like you have a little community of the pain you've been through. I do recommend doing that. I've done that a couple of times and it does help me a lot, feeling like other people have been through same things as I have, where I don't feel so alone. So it is okay if you don't want to share your story. Maybe one day in the future, if I feel safe enough, I will share my story with you guys and maybe you guys can relate. But in this moment in time, I don't want to share my story, so hope you guys understand. So yeah, and I want to end off this video on this note where if you have dealt with generational trauma yourself or you're still living in that environment today, I want to tell you this: you aren't the problem. You're not crazy thinking like this is wrong. You're not the problem, it is them. You do deserve love, respect, understanding, a place to feel safe, a place you can go to if you're sad, angry, happy, or anything. You deserve a place to be like that. And it is not you. You are so brave going through this, and you are not alone, and so many people saying that it does feel like you are alone in this, and in reality you are. But there are communities out there where they've also felt and been through this kind of stuff, where you can go there, like Reddit groups where you feel more understood and it's more like a little community instead of people around you where they don't get it or understand because they've never been through abuse themselves. You're not crazy, you're not delusional. They're the ones that are the problem. It's not you. Just keep holding on until you can leave the situation, and that is easier said than done. Sometimes the only solution is to leave and cut those people out of your life for your own well-being, and that is easier said than done, and only do so if it is safe to do so. Because I know with a lot of people out there, they say, why not just leave, when they've never been through abuse in the day of their fucking life. And in reality, everything isn't black and white. It is a mix of grey with things like this. And it's gonna be hard as hell when you do have the strength to leave, and even if you can't leave because you are a child in a position you can't, you are still a very strong person to do so. Again, it is not you, it was never you, it is them. You are very brave and strong doing that, and if no one around you believes you, I believe you. Because sadly people don't believe people with this kind of stuff, and sadly with parents and stuff, they kind of make it hidden, if that makes sense, to keep their reputation alive. And whenever you do talk about this stuff, no one around you believes you because their lies are way more believed than your truth. And I want to let you know, I believe you, I understand you. And those people, they are the monsters, not you. You're not crazy, you're not delusional, it is not you, it is them. And you should never be ashamed who you are, because they've made you feel this way. It was never you. You shouldn't have had to deal with all the blame and struggle that they put on you. It was never your fault. It was never your responsibility to deal with this. It's all them being giant children who never understood to regulate their emotions. It was never you. You deserve love and understanding and acceptance and a place to call home, a place to call family. You deserve that. I believe this quite a bit, where you can make a family where it is not blood related. You can make a family out of friends you have, and you can make a new family. I hear sayings where it's like you can't choose your family. I feel like you can. Even if you are blood related, they can still not feel like family to you, because family members and those people that say they love you because they're blood related, and if they yell and scream at you, if they PA you, SA you, or even manipulate you in any way or financially abuse you, those people do not love you. They are just abusing you, and you deserve love and protection. And those people who do that, they always use the blanket term, "Oh, I'm doing this because I love you." Again, those are just words. They don't actually love you. They're just manipulating you to get what they want, and that is not love. A person who actually loves you and cares for you, they will never it's getting hard now. They will never VA you, they will never PA you, they will never SA you, they will never take away love from you because you did something wrong in their eyes. Someone who truly loves you, they will never do that to you. They will never want to harm a piece on your little head. And those people who keep repeating the same actions over and over and over again and using the blanket term "I love you," they don't love you. They're just saying that as a blanket term for the shit they're doing. And you deserve love and understanding from people that truly care about you. It was never you, it was them. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this video now. That was a heavy topic to cover. I do recommend to do this after watching this video. Please go find something that gives you comfort, and please take care of yourself. This is a very heavy topic. I think I'm gonna take a little break from heavier stuff like this. I'm probably gonna do something on a lighter note. I said a little bit of a lighter note in next week's video, because this is a very heavy topic, but I felt like it was something I really needed to talk about and explain to people out there that have never dealt with anything like this, or even have people felt like they have someone out there who is listening and who understands what they're going through. And especially if you are younger going through this kind of crap, because again, you don't deserve this, and it was never you, and it was something I do want to talk about. I'm going to talk about some lighter topics next week, because this was a heavier one, but I do feel like this was necessary to talk about. Spread the word more about this kind of stuff. Honestly, I can say this, this is way more comfortable than like sitting on the floor in front of my bookshelf, but oh my god, my posture is bad and the lighting's bad here, and it doesn't look as nice as my bookshelf, honestly, but it is way more comfortable. I do hope you learned something in this video. I do hope you felt seen watching this video and have someone out there on the internet knowing pain and what you're going through. You're not alone. I am going to move on to a lighter topic next week. Thank you for watching this week's video. Sometimes 3 times a month, depends what I'm working on. You can subscribe if you want to, it's okay if not. And if you want to keep up to date with the channel and what I'm working on during the week, you can follow the channel's social medias. That'll be in the description down below. That's where I post little updates and what I'm working on during the week. week. And if you want to follow me personally, all my social medias are down below as well. And I probably should keep mentioning this, but I keep forgetting. I'm bad at advertising. If you guys just want to listen along to this video instead of just watching it, I do have a Spotify of every single episode I have up on here. It is just a audio version of these videos, so if you guys don't want to like watch the screen and go for a run or do laundry or whatever, it is on Spotify. That's also in the description down below. Another thing is, if you guys have a topic or a case you want me to look at that you think the media doesn't really cover or really talk about, you can put it in the comments down below, and or you can submit it on the website. There's a little section up on there where you can like suggest a case or a topic for me to talk about that you think the media or no one really talks about. On the website you can put more like information and stuff on there than the comments, but if you don't want to do that, you can also just put it in the comments down below, and I'll sure to go check it out if you want to suggest a case or topic for me to talk about and research. Please take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!